Hi, BookTube. Bill Ruttenberg here with the Ruttenberg Library. Come to you tonight with a book tag. I got tagged by Sean Standfast, and this is the DNF tag. And so I asked my daughter Crimson here to partake in the tag with me, and so she agreed, and so we're both going to be doing this. I watched this tag done on Sean Standfast's. I watched it on Jason's channel at Byways in Bookland, and I also am in the process. I have not finished it, but I will finish Steve Donahue's channel. My youngest daughter's upstairs taking a bath, so we wanted to make sure to take advantage of the time while it's relatively quiet. But anyway, the DNF tag. So here are there's 8 questions with this, and then there's a 9th one for just tagging people. So first question, do you DNF? Go ahead.
Yes.
Yes, you do.
Yes, I do.
Okay. I do too. I only DNF fiction books. I don't usually DNF my nonfiction that I start. Once I start a nonfiction, I usually finish it for the most part. But fiction is usually, if I DNF, it's fiction. Okay. Number 2, if you DNF a book, does it count towards books read for the month?
I don't count it. You didn't read the book.
Yeah, I think
you didn't finish it.
I almost think that's a silly question, just for the fact that, you know, if you read the book, you obviously didn't DNF it. So I don't either. If I DNF it, then it doesn't count. So we're coming to the end of July, and I think I finished 5 books this month, and I DNF'd 2. So if I was counting them, I would have had 7 books, but I did not finish them. So I only ended up with 5. So I do not count them towards my end of the month, because you got to finish it to count it. All right, so number 3. Is there a difference between DNF and just putting it down for a bit?
I'd say there's a difference. Because if you're putting it down for a bit, you're putting it down knowing that someday you'll pick it up and read it again. So...
yeah, and I agree. I just put it down for a bit quite often. Yeah, you know, the life of a teacher and coach can get busy, and I know every other, you know, profession out there goes through the same thing. You got, you know, busy times of the year, and I have that happen all the time, especially when basketball season rolls around and we start getting into our games, because I do middle school basketball, so our season's all right before Christmas, so it's like bam, 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 bam. And oftentimes, my time to read is very limited, and so I'll start a book, and then I hit the busy time there, and I put the book down, and then I have to come back to it. And I do that quite often, but I always come back to it. And sometimes I'm even in the middle of the book, and I come back and start it in the middle of the book. And my wife and I think my daughter think I'm a little nuts for that. So I do think that there's a difference between DNF and just putting it down for a bit. Because if I DNF a book, I'm not picking it back up.
Yeah, if you're labeling it DNF, I feel like in my head that's like, oh, I'm strictly never reading this book again. But if you're just putting it down for a bit, you know, oh, well, when I have the time, I'll read it again.
Yep. Okay, so number 4. What popular book have you DNF'd? You want to take this one? You have to tell the backstory here.
So I went years without watching the Twilight series movies, and recently my mom made me watch them because she's a Twilight fan, and I liked them. I'm a girl. I liked them. There just can't be more said. I liked the movies, and I'm like, well, the books were pretty popular, and the book came first, and, you know, you gotta read the book. I read the book, and I got 2 chapters in, and just not my style of writing, and I don't want to hate on the book, because I know a lot of people like the books, but it was too teeny bopper.
And I went into a room one morning I asked her, so how's the book going? Because we'd gotten it from the local library, and we were getting ready to need to take the books back to the library. And she looked at me and she goes, I don't know how Mom ever read that book. So it was quite the funny little moment. So with me, what popular book have I DNF'd? I'll give you an example of a nonfiction, and I don't know how popular it was. It's an old book, but it was Dean Acheson's, I think it was President Creation, something like that was the title. And it's one of the only nonfiction books I did not finish once I started it. It had to be one of the most boring, dry books I have ever read. And you can ask Crimson, I read some dry stuff. This was like the dry of the dry. It was the Sahara Desert of books. And I just did not care for it. Now, by that same token, I put it in the DNF list. I kept it, though. I did not get rid of it. And I may try someday, I don't know when, I may try to come back and read that. But my goodness, that was dry. That was a terrible month. And I did not get very far in the book. It was just dry.
I feel like if the book isn't giving you any joy, there's no point in...
Yeah. Well, and I could give you, I'll give you a couple other examples of popular books that I DNF'd. When I was in middle school, I had a buddy who read like the big thick books, and he read It. And of course, we were middle school boys, and anytime we found a book with a cuss word in it, we were, look. And he was reading It, and of course, It has a whole bunch of them in there. So he's like showing us like 5 new words every day. And he tried to get me to read the book, and I was not ready to read that book. And I didn't read it, or I tried it, and then I had to DNF it. Now, I did come back later, in 20 years later. And
so would you consider that a DNF?
At that point, yeah. And then there's a 20-year span, and I came back and tried it again.
Okay.
And I could say the same thing for Lord of the Rings. He read Lord of the Rings in middle school. And, most of those are pretty good-sized books. And that was so far over my head, I couldn't do it. And I've actually tried to start that book. The Hobbit 3 or 4 times. And I have never gotten out of the first chapter. It's just, I just don't think, I have always known that I'm pretty sure I don't like fantasy. And I just don't like it. And I hate to say that because I love the movies. Loved them. Love the movies, but can't stand the book. I could not get into it. And I know there's a lot of people out there.
The books are Old English, too.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people out there that really like the books. My sister-in-law loves it, and she tried to get me to read it. I couldn't do it. And I could probably give you a few more examples, but I think you're probably getting the idea. Number 5, what book do you wish you had DNF'd?
Do you have one? I don't know if I can answer that one.
I'm trying to think.
I mean, if I had a book that I didn't enjoy reading, but I finished it, it's probably because I had to finish it for school,
Mm-hmm.
So, like, on my own time, I don't know. Because I'd say I DNF books pretty easily. Like, if I get into the book, and I know you're not supposed to, like,
you and
judge
your mom,
it by
you and your mom both do.
Yeah, I
I don't know if there's any that I wish I would have DNF'd. I've liked pretty much. I usually like the books that I read. I wouldn't pick them up if I guess I don't go out on a limb either, though. I don't go too far out of my comfort zone usually.
Yeah,
and
like
so,
for all the books I have read, like I enjoyed. So
yeah. All right. So number 6, do you ever reattempt to read a DNF? Has this ever been successful for you? So, I told you about It, the Stephen King's It. I did reread that. That was a success. The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings books, not a success at all. But when I was in high school, and I didn't read like on my own, I read the books that were assigned, and I enjoyed the books that were assigned in class. But I didn't read a ton on my own, to be honest. Not as much as what I was doing in elementary and middle school. And then when I got to college, I started reading again. I had I think I was a social butterfly in high school, and I'd rather be chatting than reading. And I did try. I had my teacher tell me about John Jakes' series, the Camp Family Chronicles, and I tried it in high school and I wasn't ready. I didn't read it, and they're one of my favorite sets of books now. I absolutely love them, and I read them in college, and I've read them multiple times since then. And he also tried to get me to read Clan of the Cave Bear. Excellent book, but I couldn't do it in high school. I had to wait till I was in college, maybe even teaching when I was reading that one. I might have read that one when I was teaching. And he also tried to get me to read this series called The Australians. And I have read book 1 of that, and I enjoyed book 1, but I was not able to do it in high school. So it was, I've had some success coming back to books if I needed to. But, yeah. So what are we ready for? Number 7?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with books you DNF?
Return them to the library. Or I don't know if I've owned a book that I've DNF'd before.
They've all been library.
I think they've all been library. But if I did own a book that I happened to DNF, I would probably go to that place downtown.
Yeah, the little free library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a, what's it called now?
Take one, donate one. Yeah.
I don't know, that, or just ask around and see if someone wanted to read it and they could keep it. I don't know.
And with me, I DNF. When I DNF fiction books, I get rid of them, because if I couldn't finish it there, that means I don't want to reread it. I don't want to come back to it. Now my nonfiction, I don't get rid of those. But again, there's only been really the one that I could think of that I DNF'd, but I kept it, and I'm going to try it again sometime down the line. Number 8, do you choose more or less risky titles because of your stance on DNF? So for me, like I said, I don't usually read out of my comfort zone very often. I'd been trying it this summer. It's been an experiment of mine. By the way, I did DNF. I got a book from the local library that was a science fiction, and it was something Alien Echo or something like that. And yeah, I read one chapter, and it's in the first person teeny bopper young adult style.
You were looking through the teeny section
yes.
for nonfiction books.
Well, because our library didn't have very many science fiction. You guys gave me a whole bunch, big old list. Couldn't find any of them. None of them were there. So
we went around.
I went and found what they had, and I despised it. And so I did get rid of that. But I don't usually get risky titles for the most part. I don't go out on a limb very often. I get stuff that I like, and yeah. So I don't know if my DNF stance on DNF has anything to do with that. I don't really know how to answer that. Maybe.
I don't know how to answer that question. I'm just gonna not.
Yeah. All right. So the last one, number 9, is tag 5 BookTube buddies, or however many people you want. And so I am going to tag Book Zealots, Peg at the History Shelf. Let's see. And anybody else that hasn't done this tag, I can't think right off the top of my head. I apologize. I'll put 5 of them in the description. I'll put 5 people I tag in the description. Those 2 and then 3 more. And I'll put the links to those videos that I watched in the description. So, but anyway, this was the DNF tag, book tag. Thank you for watching. We hope that you're having a great week and getting plenty of reading in, and have a great day.